Every suburb's got that one busybody who thinks they're the king of the cul-de-sac, clipboard in hand, always sniffing around like they own the place. But in our little corner of Willow Bend, Georgia, we had Harlan Reeves, this guy who strutted like he was the sheriff of aesthetics, phone camera perpetually at the ready, snapping pics of anything that didn't match his perfect vision of neighborhood bliss. He wasn't voted in, wasn't hired, just self-anointed as the HOA enforcer. And last summer he pushed my granddad, Pops we called him, a grizzled 78-year-old vet with a Purple Heart from Nam, right to the edge, crossing a line that turned our quiet backyard into a battlefield of petty grudges and shocking comeuppance. It all kicked off with the faint squeak of our fence at dawn, me still rubbing sleep from my eyes over a bowl of oatmeal, when Pops, rocking on the porch with his mug of black coffee, grumbled low, "Here comes trouble again." And sure enough, there was Harlan, hoisting himself over like some wannabe spy, flashlight glinting off his bald spot, zooming in on Pop's vegetable patch. Those heirloom tomatoes and squash he'd babied all season, claiming they clashed with community standards, as if a man's garden was some kind of felony against curb appeal. Harlan wasn't just nosy. He had this deep-seated need to control everything, stemming from some old beef. Rumor had it he'd lost his own house in a messy divorce years back, blamed the neighbors for not upholding values. And now he channeled that bitterness into policing Willow Bend, measuring lawns to the inch, citing folks for faded mailboxes, all while the real HOA board turned a blind eye because he did their dirty work for free. Pops had put up with it for months, Harlan poking around our tool shed twice before, jiggling the lock like he expected to find bootleg moonshine or something illicit, muttering about potential violations. And each time, Pops reported it to the board president, Marjorie Hale, this prim woman with her endless string of committee meetings and that saccharine smile that hid a spine of steel. "Oh, Harlan's just passionate about our community," she'd coo, brushing it off like dust on her pearls. Even though under Georgia law, it was straight-up trespassing. No gray area about entering private property without a nod. Pops tried the sheriff too, but they hemmed and hawed. Said without catching him red-handed and filing right then, it was he said, she said in a small town where folks hated stirring the pot. That's when Pop's eyes got that steely glint, the one from his war stories, and he decided enough was enough, not out of rage, but this quiet resolve, like he'd seen real tyrants overseas and wasn't about to let some suburban Napoleon trample his peace. For days, he'd tinker in the garage, whistling those old Johnny Cash tunes while I handed him wrenches and wire cutters, turning our wrought iron gate into something straight out of a clever trap. Low-voltage electric fencing, totally legal if you post the signs, which he did. Big, bold yellow ones screaming, "Electrified gate, trespass at your own risk." Because Pops wasn't about vengeance. No, he wanted justice with a side of deterrence, figuring Harlan's ego would blind him to the warnings. And boy, did it! Right on cue, before the sun cracked the horizon, Harlan slunk back, boots crunching gravel, grumbling about eyesores as he gripped the gate. Zap! That jolt hit him like a mule kick, sending him yelping backward, arms windmilling, ass planting in the dirt with a thud that echoed satisfaction. Pops didn't budge from his rocker, just sipped his coffee, a faint smile cracking his weathered face. "That's the zap of karma, kid," he whispered to me, peeking from the window, heart pounding like a drum, and in that moment I saw the depth of it, how Harlan's intrusions weren't just annoying, they chipped at Pops's dignity. This man who'd fought for freedom only to have his own yard invaded by a control freak nursing old wounds. Word spread like wildfire through Willow Bend, neighbors chuckling over fences as Harlan limped down the street trying to play the victim, spinning tales of booby traps and assault. But most folks knew the score. They'd endured his peeping too, like Mrs. Jenkins down the block who'd caught him photographing her kid's trampoline as a safety hazard, or old Mr. Patel, whose herb garden got the same scrutiny, all because Harlan craved that power trip, maybe to fill the void from his failed marriage, or perhaps jealousy over Pop's quiet respect in the community. By lunchtime, Marjorie called an emergency HOA huddle in the clubhouse, me tagging along with Pops to keep things civil, but it turned into a showdown. Marjorie at the head, pearls gleaming under fluorescence, Harlan beside her with his arm in a sling for extra drama, pointing a shaky finger at Pops like a prosecutor in a bad courtroom flick. "This man's a menace," Harlan barked, voice cracking with feigned outrage. "Rigged up a death trap, nearly fried me alive." Pops leaned in slow, sliding a crisp permit across the table, his voice gravelly and unyielding. Legal as Sunday church, Marjorie. Wired right under state code, signposted clear as day. But let's talk real threats. Harlan hears trespassed 3 times. Camera in hand, like he owns my dirt. Marjorie squirmed, that fake smile faltering. Well, even if legal, it's aggressive, against our harmonious spirit. The board can regulate such things. But Pops cut through, eyes locking on hers. Regulate? Fine. Invade? No, ma'am. Georgia law calls it criminal entry, and I'm through with warnings. Next time, it's cuffs in court. The room shifted then, murmurs turning to voices, Mrs. Jenkins piping up. He measured my hedges at midnight, scared my dog half to death, Mr. Patel adding. Snapped pics of my curry plants, called them unkempt. Enough's enough. Harlan's face flushed beet red, sputtering denials. But the tide had turned, his facade cracking under the weight of collective gripes, and as Marjorie banged her gavel in vain, Pops just sat back, the quiet victor in a room finally awake to the bully among them. Harlan didn't slink away, though. No, his pride wouldn't allow it. For days he'd cruise by in his rusty Ford, slowing to a crawl past our drive, glaring like a hawk eyeing prey, that resentment boiling from years of feeling overlooked, now laser-focused on Pops as the symbol of resistance. Pops ignored it mostly, rocking on the porch with his thermos, but I could see the vigilance in his eyes, that veteran instinct humming. Then came the midnight crescendo. Rustling woke me, heart racing as I peered out. Harlan, flashlight bobbing, bolt cutters gleaming, muttering curses about taking back control, clamping down on the gate like he could sever the barrier to his dominance. Click, Pops, already waiting in the shadows, thumbed a remote, and zap. Harlan jerked like he'd hugged a lightning bolt, cutters flying, body crumpling into the mud with a splash that mixed yelp and defeat. He scrambled up, wild-eyed, yanking out his phone. 911! This psycho's murdering me with his killer fence. Screaming into the night, but Pops stayed cool, phone camera rolling every flail, every slip, capturing the trespass in crystal clarity. Sirens wailed soon after, lights painting the yard red and blue, cops stepping out wary, hands hovering near holsters, eyeing muddy Harlan clutching his injured arm versus Pops on the porch, unflappable as ever. Active electric setup? One officer asked, and Pops nodded, handing over the laminated permit and video, all above board officers. But watch this. Midnight inspection with cutters? That's breaking and entering. The cops reviewed the footage, one stifling a grin. So you trespassed? At 2 a.m.? To enforce? Harlan stammered. HOA duty. He's the threat. But the law was ironclad. Trespass, vandalism, false report. Cuffs clicked on. Harlan ranting about conspiracies and community betrayal as neighbors gathered, not whispering now but applauding softly. A wave of relief washing over Willow Bend. Pops leaned back, murmuring to me, "Sometimes justice needs a spark to light the way, son." His voice laced with that deep satisfaction of a man reclaiming his ground, the gate glowing faintly like a sentinel that had felled the giant. Yet, as Harlan sat defeated in the cruiser, sweat-soaked and stripped of his imaginary badge, I couldn't help wondering, was this true justice, or just a spark that might ignite bigger fires in a neighborhood already simmering with unspoken resentments? Pops taught me patience wins, but what if Harlan's fall exposes cracks in the HOA itself? That web of rules meant to unite but often divides, breeding more Harlans in the shadows. If you're nodding along or shaking your head, drop a comment below. What do you think? Was Pops right to zap back? Or should he have turned the other cheek? Share your own HOA horror stories or thoughts on community power plays. Let's get the conversation buzzing. And if this tale hit home, hit that like and subscribe for more real-life reckonings.